What up, what up? You are now listening to Once Upon 785, the dopest podcast in the Midwest. I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's get into it, bitch. What up, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon 785. Today's date is April 1st, 2025, and this is episode 32, Understanding Citizenship and Implications with Brandon Joe Williams. As always, I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's get into it. What up? And we are back again, and I am super excited. I have Brandon Joe Williams on the podcast. He's got the website onestupidfuck.com and Williams & Williams law firm, I think. And it's going to be an epic episode. I didn't know, what made you want to start looking into this? Like the legal laws and reading through the UCC code and...
Yeah, I was being attacked by the Employment Development Department in California for a landscaping company that I took over, and they sent me a $60,000 bill, and they started coming after me and sending me threatening letters and all this, and I was fucking terrified. I mean, I was like absolutely beyond like not sleeping, like really, it was really, really bad. I just did not know what to do or what was going on or anything. And there was somebody I knew who had tried to invite me to come and learn about the stuff for a couple of years. She had invited me many, many times, and I just always told her, no, God, no, I'm not interested. And this was enough to push me over the edge. And I called her up and I said, hey, that crazy kooky shit you've been trying to talk to me about forever, I'm ready to hear it. And so I went and saw her, and that was sort of the beginning. I started learning a little bit about it, and then I started getting a bunch of books, and then I started getting more books, and then more books. And then there was a guy here in California who she referred me to, who's been doing a lot of this legal stuff for like 50 or 60 years. He's an older guy. And started working with him. Yeah, I just the more I learned and the more I looked, the more interested I got. It just became a snowball effect. And before I knew it, I was wanting to quit my job to do this full time, which was probably about... So I started in September of 2021 is when I first went to Nancy's house to start learning about the stuff and getting all the books. And then I read, 20 or 30 books between September of 2021 and March of 2022. And then I launched onestupidfuck.com on March 14th, 2022. We just had our anniversary a couple weeks ago.
Hell yeah.
And thank you. Yeah. And then I released the 1.0 free contract killer course on July 2nd of 2022. And then by the time 2023 rolled around, I already knew probably by like February or March of 2023 that, my day job had to go. It was just getting in the way at that point. And so I put in, it took me like 8 months to finally pull the trigger on that. It was a very slow burn. And then I put in like a 45-day notice because I basically ran this whole dental office, right? And so by September of 2023 is when I officially quit my day job and started doing this full time. And then August 18th of 2024 is when I released the 2.0 version of the free contract killer course. We've had a lot of breakthroughs since then. Actually, it's pretty wild how fast things are moving nowadays. So I'll probably have a 3.0 course coming out this year, most likely. If anything, probably near the end of the summer or something.
That's awesome. And I mean, the only person that I heard on like the internet before you was like Jordan Maxwell and Carl Miller. But when I heard you and just, you don't give a fuck the way it's so fucking funny. It's like when you go to your website and you sign up and it's just like don't send me messages unless you're bitches and you want to cuddle or something. I was like, fuck yeah, this guy is awesome.
Well, a lot of the guys, the whole point of everything, there's two purposes. There's 2 points, right? Well, there's 3 really. I mean, if we want to get really ridiculous with it. Point number 1 is just I had been in marketing and sales for 12, 13 years. I already owned onestupidfuck.com. I already knew I wanted to do something with it. I had that domain for like a year before I even knew what I was going to do with it. I knew I was going to do something with it. And it was like it's the whole branding is like a rebellion and like a vomiting of everything that I experienced doing marketing and sales for 12 years. And I became very good at it, don't get me wrong. And I never did the shady, car salesy, manipulative horseshit. I was just like, I'm never doing that. Fuck that. I did education-based sales. Everything was just education, 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 education. How do I educate the client? That, I built a lot of trust with my clients. It was really cool. I started making a lot of money doing that because my clients are like my people. They're like my pickletarians now were my clients then. Literally, I'm not kidding. So the second reason is protection. So the media can't tear me down. What are you gonna do? The local dude named One Stupid Fuck did some stupid shit. Yeah, well, you're stupid for even talking about it. A guy calls himself One Stupid Fuck. What do you? It's sort of like immunity to like press release style attacks, right? And I'm actually fully trained in press warfare. I've never had to actually do much with it because no one will attack me. I wish somebody would, because the way that I'm set up is if anybody attacked me, I would use whatever they did to my advantage, and it would be a huge. It would actually grow my platform massively, very, very rapidly. I've actually thought about. Have you ever heard of a Ryan Holiday book called "Trust Me, I'm Lying: Confessions of a Media Manipulator"? He used to actually create fake warfare in PR stunts to get other organizations to attack him on purpose. And I've thought about at some point in time, I probably will start doing that. Right now, I'm just so focused on litigation and so focused on research and stuff like that. But at some point in time, that sounds very appealing to me to start getting into like hardcore international like PR warfare type and attacks that create like huge PR explosions, and then being able to basically control or handle or manage those explosions and steer them in a particular way, which is what they're doing all the time. And I'm actually fully trained on how to do that. I've just never actually done it, but I am trained in how to do it, and I am trained in how to defend myself from it if I am the receiving end of it. So that's point number 2 for the reason why the branding is the way it is. Point number 3 is that the average person who's talking about this stuff is 100 years old, and it's not something to say. I'm not being mean. It sounds very mean, right? No, it's people who have gotten older. They probably, I bet Jordan Maxwell didn't really have financial issues. He was kind of more chill. Like in your 20s, you're just trying to figure out what to stick your dick into, and then by the time you're probably in your 50s, 60s, 70s, I imagine you're probably more relaxed with your body, more relaxed with who you are, more relaxed with money. Like you have more things straightened out. So now, like, it makes sense to me why older people who can definitely read a lot better, the generations are getting worse and worse at the reading too. So we have that problem too. So it makes sense to me that everyone's 100 years old. Like it does. I'm not complaining or saying mean things. It's just is what it is. It's just all the guys are super old. If you're 30 years old, 25, 35 years old, it's just like, grandpa, and grandpa's going on and on about something, and okay, I wanted to be the guy to bridge that gap, to make it quote unquote cool, to be the Beavis and Butthead version of it, to bring it into the possibility of understanding and the realm of consumption for. I knew I probably couldn't get it all the way down into the 20-year-olds. I knew the 20-year-olds just like whatever. I don't even really care that much anyways. I was thinking like 30. When I started this whole thing and I put it all together, I was like, how can I get the demographic of like all the way down to like 30 years old? Like to me, that was like, holy shit, absolutely epic. Because The California Assembly that Nancy was a part of, the average age there was also, 70. So it was like, to find somebody below the age of like 60 was pretty rare. To find someone below the age of 50 was almost didn't even happen. So 30 is like a humongous jump, monstrous. Like it's like 50 would have been like absolutely unheard of. 40 would have been like, you're insane. That's impossible. It's never going to happen demographically. I wanted to go all the way to 30. I was like, how can I just stretch the ever loving fuck out of this thing, get it all the way to 20? Just seemed, I was like, fuck 20. I'm not even going to try. It's like, fuck them. Right. But 30 was like, I think I can do this. I really did believe in my mind. I was like, I really think I can do this. So that was my target, was 30 years old. And I've done a pretty good job. I would say if I had to really throw down a hard spear in the ground and say, like, what age have I been able to get it down to? 35 would actually be like a more technically accurate answer. But we do have 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds. It's not in the majority at all. I would say 35 is probably the lowest. And then obviously it goes up to infinity, because that's the older people get, the more they seem to be interested in the subject. So, 80, 70, 80, 90-year-olds, we've got tons and tons of those. That's just because of that, it was like that before I got here. Right? That's the overall like demographic breakdown as to why it's like it is. And it's funny because you think to yourself, well, I'm surprised older people are even connecting with your brand. It's so crazy. It's so lunatic. It's so wild. And what's funny is that you have two classes of people that are above the age of 60. You have the class of people who take things literally, and they get very upset. And they don't like my platform at all. They think my platform is a degradation of everything that should be about the subject. And then you have people that can look past all the craziness, and they can see the intent, and they can see like the effect, and they can see the product of what's going on. And they can see the bigger picture as to why someone may do this. And they can see the bigger picture of the reasoning behind it. They're very, very supportive. So it just depends on the perception. And it's perfect too, because I don't want the people who can't process sarcasm. They're fucking annoying. They need clarification on everything. They can't fucking perform. They're locked up, like mentally and emotionally. They're locked up real bad. And the cool thing about what I'm doing, and the cool thing about what I've done, is that, the class of people who can best process sarcasm and humor are people who have a lucid mind. The subclass of the cultures that have the most lucid mind always is artists. I'm personally a musician. I have been since I was very, very young. I used to teach music theory to kids. I was been in multiple metal bands. I play drums. I play guitar. I used to scream in a couple metal bands. There's still videos of me on my YouTube screaming. It's pretty fun. So music's always been a big thing for me, but then I just started getting into all this stuff. Writing, I sort of converted from music over to writing. Now I write all the time, and I don't play music that often. But creative, artistic individuals are the ones who are able to process, enjoy, and get into sarcasm and humor. And those are the same kinds of people that can also put together documents and file things and communicate well with people. So it works out as a natural filter. I don't need or want a bunch of people who can't process sarcasm. It just makes everything 10 times harder. They become the babies of the group that you have to constantly fucking nurture, and nothing ever happens. They're just a fucking liability the whole time. Whereas with artists and lucid thinking people, they may be confused at first, but they get off the ground pretty rapidly, and then they actually, they actually do something effective, and they take action, and then they change the world, right? So the whole thing became like a self-filtration mechanism where, it was like, how can I set this thing up? I don't want a bunch of fucking retards on my shit, right? So yeah, there's a lot of people who just see it and they get very turned off by it, and they just instantly run away. But that's what I want. It was all designed that way. So so what are we left with? We're left with a bunch of fucking crazy psychopaths of all different genders, we have fucking transvestites, we got all this crazy shit. And it's all just people who just don't give a fuck, who are just crazy fucks, who are excited about this and they want to take action. And it just winds up being a fucking great group. And that's the Pickletarian nationality. We literally have our own nation, we have our own nationality, and it's getting fucking huge and it's beautiful.
That's so awesome. And I feel like a lot of people that I try to tell this information is that it goes, if I tell them to watch your 3-pin videos, it's like driving without a license, taxes, and infinite money. But it goes so much deeper than that, even like, and most of the time when people like show videos, like it can be easily disproved, but you always come with all the facts, you pull up all the receipts. And when you say that you might need to watch this video, like the UCC videos, like multiple times, that's a fact because it's fucking, it's so fucking deep, dude.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. I think it's weird personally that people hate it because for me, it's like if it wasn't so deep and it wasn't so crazy, then I wouldn't be able to spend this much time on it and create a whole big fucking nation out of it and do all this fun stuff with it. If it was super easy and super fast and super simple and it just took like a couple hours, and I'm thinking in my head, like, what is it that you do in your life that's so fucking important that when presented with something like this, that's so fucking cool, the information and what it means for America and the future of yourself and your family and your loved ones and everybody around you. Like, what is it that you have? Like, my question is to people, like, what is it that you have that's going on that's so fucking important that you wouldn't want to get involved in something fucking cool like this, you know? And what's crazy is that they don't have an answer to the question because there is nothing. So then the next question is, are you just unable to get yourself excited and to get yourself interested in and get yourself involved in anything, you know? And if that's the case, then that's just a really sad personal situation that you're dealing with that has absolutely nothing to do with me at all. Because I'll tell you right now, there is nothing in my life that I have ever seen or been involved with or had that has come even close. Like if it was a football field and the 100-yard line was all this crazy legal shit, I mean, I've gotten to like maybe the 5 or the 10-yard line. That's it. I've never experienced anything in my entire life that has gotten me, you know, feeling like this and waking up every day with pep in my step and fucking jumping out of bed like a goddamn ninja backflip. You know, I just, you know, it's like being on fucking cocaine all the time. And it's just like, how could someone see this and not want to do something with it? Just absolutely just blows my mind. I just can't even fathom it. It's just like, it's just absolutely unbelievable to me.
Yeah, so you quit contracting with the government, correct?
Yeah.
Like you,
Well, I mean, mostly, I mean, yeah, there's still like I'm the agent on behalf of the person who holds the passport.
and see, that's so awesome. Didn't you trademark your all caps names?
Yeah, so my name is trademarked. You know, for people who aren't familiar with what that means, the name is a trade name, right? So for example, with like credit reporting, they're using that name and they're selling these credit reports. So it's actually a commercial transaction using that trade name, which is your name. When you trademark, when you do a federal registered trademark of your name, now what happens is every single time they use that name with the credit stuff, because they are making money on it and they are going through commercial transactions using it as a profitable item, you can basically, if there's anything on your credit score that you don't like, you can sue in a federal court for like $50,000 for each individual infraction. And then if they want to put anything on your credit score, they have to call you as the registered trademark holder and get your approval to do so. Right. Now, I haven't filed that case yet, but I have an event coming up at the end of April. And then when I get back, probably in May or June, I'm going to file that case. And then I have another case that I'm working on that I'll probably be filing around that time too. So we'll be getting more into that. I call it credit reprogramming. You have credit repair. And then what I'm trying to put together right now, and when I release it, it's going to be called credit reprogramming. And that's going to be where you become the god of your own credit score, and you become the god of your own credit to the point where they have to call you and get, basically written approval. So they'd probably send you a letter or email you or call you, but then you would have to send them an email back after the call confirming various items that go on your credit report.
That's so awesome. And I heard on the Cult Conspiracy how you said that if you have the IRS, you can you pretty much have to give them approval to charge it, and you can wipe your debt.
Yeah, the IRS is really easy to work with. Basically, when you look in the Internal Revenue Manual, there's a section that talks about how you can just send the bill back with what's called an endorsement on it. And what they're asking from you is authorization, basically, right? I can do a screen share and show it to you.
Hell yeah.
Let's see here. It's going to be, can you see my screen?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to my website, go down to the flow chart. Do we need? I think it's this one here. No, it's not that. Up here. It's, let's see. Here it is. This is the one we need. So we're going to go to this section here of the Internal Revenue Manual. It's called Bills of Exchange. We're going to see it on the left-hand side as we scroll down. Let's go. Bill of Exchange. Let's do a search. There it is. Here we go. IRM 3.8.45.5.10.1. Bill of Exchange. If a bill of exchange or registered bill of exchange is received from a taxpayer authorizing the campus to settle their account using Fedwire, send everything received to the following address, and then it has this particular address: Department of the Treasury, Office of Executive Secretary, 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, 3413, Washington, D.C., 20220. Basically, all you have to do to understand what this is saying is you can watch my show that I did with Cult of Conspiracy. It's on my YouTube, or you can go on their Patreon or YouTube, or they don't have YouTube, so it'd probably be easier just to see it on my channel. So they're just saying if you send back a bill, if you endorse, which means like write transfer instructions, which is a little more complicated, on the face of your bill, and then send it back with a cover letter that authorizes the Internal Revenue Service to take that bill and exchange it at the Federal Reserve discount window using what is called Fedwire. Fedwire is basically the settlement system operated by the Federal Reserve banks that allows financial institutions to transfer funds electronically in between what's called the Federal Reserve discount window. You can see here. Yeah. So you can read more about that here. Here's the history. I may actually read this myself because I would like to learn more about this. They have these various references. So yeah, you can just get your bills to just vanish with the IRS pretty easily. I just sent in maybe $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 worth of bills back in November, and we've had a lot of other people send in a lot of shit. I think the biggest one I ever saw get wiped away was, I think we had one $90,000 one, and I think we had one that was like $120,000.
Damn. That's crazy. Does it matter if you have do you have to be fully withdrawn from have a passport or
No.
can you do it with a driver's license?
The
someone like
financial
me who's like
stuff
in
is
the
totally
process?
separate. You don't need to do anything. The financial shit is like totally separate. You can do the financial shit like literally right away. You don't have to do any citizenship stuff. You don't have to do any state national stuff. You don't have to do any status correction type stuff. You don't have to do anything. You can just start popping immediately with a lot of the financial stuff.
That's so awesome. And I mean, just sticking with the financial, or not the financial side, when you were reading that and you said Washington, D.C., a lot of people don't even know that Washington, D.C. is not part of America. It's a foreign entity. And have you found out where it's at yet? Where it's actually located?
No, they won't tell me. How big? What kind of audience do you have? How many people watch a show?
About 3,000?
And do you know the demographic? Are they all American, or are they male, female, or ages, or anything? Do you know anything about their demographics?
They're mostly males, and they're around my age, like 35 up to 44, I think.
Okay,
And
good.
they're mostly American.
That makes sense. So let's see here. Oh man, I'm totally spacing out. What was the question again? Sorry about that.
Um, oh, what was it? Where Washington, D.C. is located.
Oh yeah. So you have 4 USC 71. All that part of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the permanent seat of government of the United States. And then you have UCC 9-307, which is called location of debtor. Subsection H, location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. And then we go to Washington, D.C. as 51st state, which is statehood.dc.gov/page/FAQ, frequently asked questions page, which this is a government website. You can see that by, if you go to like contact us and kind of look into it more, you can see who it's involving, and you see it's statehood.dc.gov. So you can see it's a government website. If we go down to this question here, if DC becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government, monuments, and museums? And then this first few words is really shocking. This area is unpopulated. So what we have is a unpopulated area inside of the District of Columbia. And that unpopulated area is this area called the United States, right? And I have this document, which is a Freedom of Information Act request that I had sent to Washington, D.C. through 2 different organizations, through the Office of Chief Technology, which is called OCTO. And then I also sent one to the Zoning Commission of Washington, D.C. And it says here, this is what I submitted on statehood.dc/page/FAQ. There is a section entitled, if DC becomes a 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government, monuments, and museums? It says, quote, this area is unpopulated. So my question is, what is the exact location and coordinates of the, quote, federal seat of government, end quote, which is described as, quote, unpopulated, end quote? And they said they didn't have anything to show me. So there was an appeal process on the form that they sent me. So I went through the appeal process. And when I went through the appeal process, I typed this up. I have ongoing litigation as well as litigation that I am building. And what is needed is the exact coordinates of the location of the national seat of government that is described in 4 USC 71. In UCC 9-307H, this juristic person is described as being, quote, located in the District of Columbia, end quote, but I do not know the exact coordinates, which is what is needed. I'm attempting to use the DC Real Property Finder, and if I type, quote, United States, end quote, it directs me to a building on the southwest corner of Pennsylvania and Ninth. I understand that I have been directed to a massive body of information that you guys have, but I have no idea where to start or how to verify the information. This is the basis for the appeal. If someone could tell me the exact tool or program that I could use to successfully collect the above information, that I am able to actually acquire it, then this appeal would not be needed and I could simply cancel it. And that was the basis of my appeal. And basically, if you read their response, they basically said, we have the right to just basically say, fuck you. And we're basically just saying, fuck you. You can see here, it's public policy that all persons are entitled to full and complete information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of those who represent them as public officials and employees. FOIA creates the right to inspect and copy any public record of a public body, right? The right to examine public records is subject to various exemptions that may form the basis of a denial of a request. DC FOIA was modeled on the corresponding Federal Freedom of Information Act request, and decisions construing the federal statute are instructive and may be examined to construe the local law, meaning we're not completely and utterly underneath what you think is the Freedom of Information Act request, essentially, right? So under DC FOIA, an agency, quote, has no duty either to answer questions unrelated to document requests or to create documents, end quote. The law only requires a disclosure of non-exempt documents, not answers to interrogatories. FOIA creates only a right of access to records, not a right to personal services, right? So basically they're saying we conclude that they've properly responded to my DC FOIA request, and we hereby deny your appeal.
That's so crazy that they can do that and get away with it, and there's not people. I just don't know how there's not more people asking questions about this, because when it comes to the government, you want to abolish the 14th Amendment, like get rid of it. Well, actually, not even get rid of it, just have them acknowledge that it was never legally passed into law.
Yeah, Congress, there's already a whole thing on Congress in 1967 where they said that it never was legally passed. So it's been, it doesn't actually exist legally. And the entire U.S. citizen category, like, are you a U.S. citizen? That whole category of the U.S. citizen category comes from the 14th Amendment. Congress has already said that the 14th Amendment was never legally ratified at all. So what that means is there is no U.S. citizen category. So we operate as though there is a U.S. citizen category, but legally there actually is not a U.S. citizen category.
Yeah, and the whole goal is to not be a U.S. citizen anymore, because you don't have, like, instead of having the right to bear arms, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have to get a license to carry a gun, and that's just more contracting with the government. They put the right to bear arms as the Second Amendment. That's how important it was.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So if we get into, like, recently I did the Red Pill Cartel podcast, and I thought that was probably my favorite podcast I've ever done involving this whole U.S. citizen thing, right? But basically, if we go into my website here, williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com, and we go down to case law, we can read a little bit about this whole United States citizen thing. We only have to look at 2 different court cases, really. We can look at more, but I have them all culled here for anybody who wants to see them. And I have all the quotes and all the good stuff. It's pretty, I turned, many hours, dozens of hours into, maybe a half an hour's worth of work. So this is the case back in the day that really started to accelerate a lot of the frustrations that were going on right before the Civil War. It's called the Dred Scott versus Sanford case. And in this case, they're trying to figure out, are released slaves citizens, right? And some of the quotes from this case from the Supreme Court, this is from 1857, are the following. We have the words, quote, people of the United States, end quote, and, quote, citizens, end quote, are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of this sovereignty. Here is where they're talking about the case. The question before us is whether the class of persons described in the plea in abatement compose a portion of this people and are constituent members of this sovereignty. We think they are not, and that they are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. On the contrary, they were at that time considered a subordinate and inferior class of beings who had been subjugated by the dominant race and, whether emancipated or not, yet remained subject to their authority and had no rights or privileges but such as those who held the power and the government might choose to grant them. And what they're talking about in this is they're talking about Negro slaves of African descent and their descendants. So it would include their children. The 13th Amendment released the Negro slaves of African descent, and the 14th Amendment, which we're going to get into in a moment, was created, what was basically through a court case called the Slaughterhouse Cases. The 14th Amendment was basically, well, we'll get into it in a moment. I'll go through it with you guys so you can kind of see for yourself. Okay, so let's keep going, because this is 1857 we're reading now. This is before the 14th Amendment. And then the next case that they did to overturn this case is where they started to change all these things. So, but this is an important background to understand the Slaughterhouse Cases, because the Slaughterhouse Cases is literally the entire point of the whole case is to try to fix what they think is wrong with this case. So, quote number 3, in the opinion of the court, the legislation and histories of the times and the language used in the Declaration of Independence show that neither the class of persons who had been imported as slaves nor their descendants, whether they had become free or not, were then acknowledged as a part of the people, nor intended to be included in the general words used in that memorable instrument. It is difficult at this day to realize the state of public opinion in relation to that unfortunate race, which prevailed in the civilized and enlightened portions of the world at a time of the Declaration of Independence, and when the Constitution of the United States was framed and adopted. But the public history of every European nation displays it in a manner too plain to be mistaken. They had, for more than a century before, been regarded as beings of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in social or political relations, and so far inferior that they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his benefit. He was bought and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise and traffic, wherever a profit could be made by it. This opinion was, at that time, fixed and universal in the civilized portion of the white race. It was regarded as an axiom in morals as well as in politics, which no one thought of disputing or supposed to be open to dispute, and men in every grade and position in society daily and habitually acted upon it in their private pursuits as well as in matters of public concern without doubting for a moment the correctness of this opinion. And in no nation was this opinion more firmly fixed or more uniformly acted upon than by the English government and the English people. They not only seized them on the coast of Africa and sold them or held them in slavery for their own use, but they took them as ordinary articles of merchandise to every country where they could make a profit on them, and were far more extensively engaged in this commerce than any other nation in the world. It doesn't get a whole lot clearer than that.
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
And here's the next quote. This one's probably one of the most shocking ones, honestly. This is a totally separate section of the case. But there are two clauses in the Constitution which point directly and specifically to the Negro race as a separate class of persons and show clearly that they were not regarded as a portion of the people or citizens of the government then formed.
So pretty
Pretty
much,
wild.
if you say that you're an American citizen, you're saying that you're a released Negro slave.
If you say you're a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, U.S. citizen.
Yeah, so now we'll get into that case. So then we have the Civil War after that case, the first one we just went over. Then coming out of the Civil War, they're trying to figure this out. So they did this case, which is the one that overturned the Dred Scott case, which we're going to see in a moment, right? So the 14th Amendment supposedly was ratified, which it never was, I think in like 68 or something, right? So, or 71 or whatever it was. So here we're in 1873. So we're gonna see here, what are they talking about here? The first section of the 14th article, to which our attention is more specially invited, opens with a definition of citizenship. Not only citizenship of the United States, but citizenship of the states. No such definition was previously found in the Constitution, nor had any attempt been made to define it by act of Congress. It has been the occasion of much discussion in the courts, by the executive departments, and in the public journals. It had been said by eminent judges that no man was a citizen of the United States, except as he was a citizen of one of the states composing the Union. Those, therefore, who had been born and resided always in the District of Columbia or in the territories, though within the United States, were not citizens. So continuing to the next quote here. Then all the Negro race who had been recently made free men, which is by the 13th Amendment, were still not only not citizens, but were incapable of becoming so by anything short of an amendment to the Constitution, which is what they're talking about in the 14th Amendment. To remove this difficulty primarily, and to establish a clear and comprehensive definition of citizenship, which should declare what should constitute citizenship of the United States and also citizenship of a state, the first clause of the first section was framed. And what they're talking about here is 14th Amendment. They're talking about this here. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, keep in mind they've already explained this to you. You just didn't see it in this first case, right? So let's go back to the Dred Scott case, and let's see what they say here. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms. And then look at this next quote here. The question before us is whether the class of persons described in the plea of abatement. So white people that are state citizens are people. Slaves that are released from the 13th Amendment who are Negroes of African descent and their descendants are persons. When you read the 14th Amendment, it doesn't say all people born or naturalized in the United States, all persons. So you can take out this word and you can say released African slaves, released Negro African slaves and their children that were released from the 13th Amendment but had no citizenship. So the way you would read this is all released Negro African slaves and their children who aren't qualified for state citizenship, who are born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States. It doesn't, and of the state wherein they reside. So we have to get into it more and more and more to get into what all that means. But basically, they're only talking about released slaves. They aren't talking about state citizens and white people.
Yeah, and I mean, there's certain words in there that I had no clue what they meant until I started listening to your course, like naturalized, or what was that word that it took you forever to figure out, like the real definition of, was
Reside.
it people? Reside?
I mean, most of them, they were pretty tough, you know. But if we go back now to the Slaughterhouse Cases, or we just at a minute ago, right? So now we're going to get into that first clause, right? The first observation we have to make on this clause is that it puts at rest both the questions which we stated to have been the subject of differences of opinion. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state. And it overturns the Dred Scott decision by making all persons born within the United States and subject to its jurisdiction citizens of the United States. That its main purpose was to establish the citizenship of the Negro can admit of no doubt. The phrase subject to its jurisdiction was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, consuls, and citizens or subjects of foreign-born states born within the United States. This is the most important part. That its main purpose was to establish the citizenship of the Negro can admit of no doubt. AKA, everything we're talking about only has to do with released African black slaves, not white people.
Yeah, and you can see crazy.
That you can see that echoed. You can see that echoed in this case here, Valkenburg. Ellen R. Van Valkenburg versus Albert Brown, 43 Cal 43 from the California Supreme Court, 1872. Very, very clear. No white person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction, or born without those limits and subsequently naturalized under their laws, owes the status of citizenship to the recent amendments to the federal Constitution. The history and aim of the 14th Amendment is well known, and the purpose had in view in its adoption well understood. That purpose was to confer the status of citizenship upon a numerous class of persons domiciled within the limits of the United States who could not be brought within the operation of the naturalization laws because native born and whose birth, though native, had at the same time left them without the status of citizenship. These persons were not white persons, but were in the main persons of African descent who had been held in slavery in this country, or if having themselves never been held in slavery, were the native born descendants of slaves. Prior to the adoption of the 14th Amendment, it was settled that neither slaves nor those who had been such, nor the descendants of these, though native and freeborn, were capable of becoming citizens of the United States. What case are they talking about? Dred Scott versus Sanford. The 13th Amendment, though conferring the boon, which means benefit, of freedom upon native-born persons of African blood, had yet left them under an insuperable, which means impossible to overcome, bar as to citizenship. Here it is. Here's the big bombshell. And it was mainly to remedy this condition that the 14th Amendment was adopted. Now we look at 22 USC 212. Who's entitled to a passport? Not people. People aren't entitled to a passport. Persons entitled to a passport. No passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States. So right there, they're telling you, I mean, we can go into this whole thing gets a little bit crazier. If we go to Title 8, where they define the word person when it comes to, passports and stuff like that. We go down to B3. Let's see if I can find it super fast. B3. What is this? Interesting. Interesting. I'm having some realizations here myself doing this again. Done this 80 million times, and here I am still. There's always more. There's always more, my friends. There's always more. Okay. Gosh, let's see here. Person. There we go. The term person means an individual or an organization, right? And you can see that in the tax code is my favorite definition of the word person for people who are brand new to all this. It's pretty wild. The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. And the term individual does not mean you. The term individual means a sole proprietorship, which I'm not going to get into too much, but the word individual actually means sole proprietorship. So it doesn't mean you. You think it means you. It doesn't mean you. So the term person shall be construed to mean and include a sole proprietorship, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. If we go back to Title 8, the term person means a sole proprietorship or an organization. And the term organization means, but is not limited to an organization, corporation, company, partnership, association, trust, foundation, or fund, and includes a group of persons, whether or not incorporated, permanently or temporarily associated together with joint action on any subject or subjects. So you say to yourself, well, what does that mean, Brandon? It means that if you have a business like Starbucks, that business is a person per the definition in Title 8. if you go to 22 USC 212, persons entitled to a passport, that same definition from Title 8 is what applies here. So basically, organizations can get passports, is what I'm trying to say.
And
no one knows that, but
aren't
that's the truth of the
states
matter.
a person too?
Yeah, states are a person. Everything is a person.
And isn't it pretty much like, to simplify it, your name in all caps is the organization?
It's a sole
The
proprietorship.
LLC? Yeah, sole proprietorship.
Yeah, it's a sole proprietorship. And the way that you can prove that really easily is 26 CFR 301.7701-11. The term social security number means the taxpayer identifying number of an individual or estate. If we go to the form, the application to get an employer identification number called the SS4, and we go down to subsection 9A where it says type of entity, we can see here estate. What does it connect to? A social security number. The only other area where it says SSN, it says here sole proprietor. So the word sole proprietor or sole proprietorship and the word individual is the same term.
That's so fucking wild.
So, if you zoom in, if you get a checkbook, check picture, if you don't have any checks, just go out and just buy some at the bank. If you look at a check where it says MP right here where you sign, if you scroll way in, if you zoom way in on this, MP stands for microprint. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but if you scroll way in, you can't see it on this. But it says authorized representative over and over and over and over again in the line underneath where you sign. That's what MP means. MP means microprint. Authorized representative on a check where you sign. You got to pull out your checkbooks. I can pull out one of mine right now real quick if you just give me a second. Is that all right?
All
Just give me
right.
1 second.
That sounds good.
So here is, let me pull you back up on my screen here. And I will put it up against, I'm going to protect my account number. But give me 1 sec, okay? I'll put it up in front of the camera.
Yeah, you can see that, like, you can definitely tell that's not a solid line.
So if you pull up your checkbook, or if you go and get one, or even if you've been given a check by somebody else, on the bottom right where it says signature, MP means microprint. The line says authorized representative over and over again. You got to think you're signing on behalf of somebody else, because the sole proprietorship is a person. You're signing on behalf of another person, which is why the IRS can get into your account. The government can get into your account. It's not your account. Never was. Personal accounts are business accounts. It's a business of your name in all capital letters. It's called a sole proprietorship. You don't know where it came from. You didn't make it. Someone else did. So what makes you think you own it? You don't.
Exactly. And I like how I think it's on the Williams and Williams, when you list like all the people that work there, you break down the two different individuals that you all are.
Yeah. It's pretty fun, right?
Yeah. Because people don't understand that, like, there's two of you. Even if you don't want to accept it, that's how it is legally and in reality.
Exactly.
didn't you say you had to go down to, was it Social Security, and beat them in the face to where they went after you trademarked your name? And you said also, not to, I just didn't want to forget this, that it would be illegal for you to pay taxes.
Well, yeah, because to pay taxes, you have to be either a U.S. citizen or a resident. We can get into what that means. So we already read that one. We're going to go back up to where we were at. Okay, good. Next quote for the Slaughterhouse Cases is this one here. The next observation is more important in view of the arguments of counsel in the present case. It is that the distinction between citizenship of the United States and citizenship of a state is clearly recognized and established. Not only may a man be a citizen of the United States without being a citizen of a state, but an important element is necessary to convert the former into the latter. He must reside within the state to make him a citizen of it, but it is only necessary that he should be born or naturalized in the United States to be a citizen of the Union. It is quite clear then that there is a citizenship of the United States and a citizenship of a state, which are distinct from each other and which depend upon different characteristics or circumstances in the individual. We think the distinction and its explicit recognition in this amendment of great weight in this argument, because the next paragraph of this same section, which is the one mainly relied on by the plaintiffs in error, meaning in this case, speaks only of privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States and does not speak of those of citizens of the several states. Two completely different citizenship categories, right? Of the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States and of the privileges and immunities of the citizens of a state, and what they respectively are, we will presently consider, but we wish to state here that it is only the former which are placed by this clause under the protection of the federal Constitution, and that the latter, whatever they may be, are not intended to have any additional protection by this paragraph of the amendment. So the federal Constitution they're talking about has nothing to do with state citizens. It only has to do with U.S. citizens, but state citizens just don't need it. State citizens are the actual original Americans. Then, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, back when it was the United States of, like, the Republic, before they turned into a corporation.
Yeah, before this case, there was no U.S. citizen. So that what they're doing is they're explaining that there's this whole new class, and they're explaining the differences between this brand new class being created for the released slaves, the Negro slaves of African descent, this brand new class specifically for the released slaves, and they're explaining how the 14th Amendment and the federal Constitution only has to do with this new category, and it has nothing to do with the original category of citizens prior to the 14th Amendment, which are called state citizens. So if someone asked you, are you a U.S. citizen, you'd laugh and you'd say, absolutely not. I mean, for me, I'd laugh and say, well, no, look at the color of my skin. I couldn't be. If I told you I was, I'd be going to prison immediately based off of just literally my skin color. But the thing is that the real truth of the matter is, no, I'm a state citizen. And then if you want to know which state I am a state citizen of, it would be California, which would make me a Californian. I am not a citizen of the United States. I've never been a citizen of it. I thought I was for a long time, but I am absolutely not. Okay.
Same.
So if then there is a difference between the privileges and immunities belonging to a citizen of the United States as such and those belonging to the citizen of the state as such, the latter must rest for their security and protection where they have heretofore rested, for they are not embraced by this paragraph of the amendment, meaning state citizens only have what came before the 14th. This whole 14th Amendment thing has nothing to do with you guys. It only has to do with Negro African descendant slaves who were released by the 13th Amendment, needed citizenship, couldn't get it, and then got citizenship by the 14th. Right? Now, keep in mind, everyone is using the 14th Amendment everywhere for everything. If you use the 14th Amendment in court, by definition, they can just say no. If you're a state citizen and you use the Bill of Rights, they can't say no. If you're a U.S. citizen and you use the 14th Amendment, they can just say no. 14th Amendment privileges and immunities are given by the government and can be taken away. Rights that were given to state citizens, like we saw earlier from Dred Scott, that first line, the words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of these people and a constituent member of this sovereignty. Then we have a whole different class of persons. Next quote, we're back in Dred Scott. The question before us is whether the class of persons described in the plea of abatement compose a portion of this people and are constituent members of this sovereignty. We think they are not. And that they are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. So going back to the Slaughterhouse Cases, right? Let's see here. Fortunately, we are not without judicial construction of this clause of the Constitution. The first and leading case on the subject is that of Corfield and Coriel, decided by Mr. Justice Washington in the Circuit Court for the District of Pennsylvania in 1823. And then now Mr. Miller, talking in the Slaughterhouse Cases, is now quoting Mr. Justice Washington in the Corfield versus Coriel case. The inquiry, he says, is what are the privileges and immunities of citizens of the several states? We feel no hesitation in confining these expressions to those privileges and immunities which are fundamental. We believe which belong of right to the citizens of all free governments, and which have at all times been enjoyed by citizens of the several states which compose this union from the time of their becoming free, independent, and sovereign. What these fundamental principles are, it would be more tedious than difficult to enumerate. They may all, however, be comprehended under the following general heads: protection by the government, with the right to acquire and possess property of every kind, and to pursue and obtain happiness and safety, subject nonetheless to such restraints as the government may prescribe for the general good of the whole. Next quote, going back to Samuel Freeman Miller in the Slaughterhouse Cases. In the case of Paul v. Virginia, the court, in expounding this clause of the Constitution, says that the privileges and immunities secured to citizens of each state in the several states by the provision in question are those privileges and immunities which are common to the citizens in the latter states under their constitution and laws by virtue of their being citizens, end quote. Next quote by Mr. Miller from the Slaughterhouse Cases of 1873. It would be the vainest show of learning to attempt to prove by citations of authority that up to the adoption of the recent amendments, no claim or pretense was set up that those rights depended on the federal government for their existence or protection, beyond those very few express limitations which the federal Constitution imposed upon the states, such as, for instance, the prohibition against ex post facto laws, bills of attainder, and laws impairing the obligation of contracts. But with the exception of these and a few other restrictions, the entire domain of the privileges and immunities of citizens of the states, as above defined, lay within the constitutional and legislative power of the states and without that of the federal government. This is what people don't get. The federal Constitution has nothing to do with a state citizen. It's the entire domain of privileges and immunities of citizens of the states, as above defined, lay within the constitutional and legislative power of the states, and without that of the federal government. And that's why you see so many examples of people going into court talking about the Constitution, and then the judge says that document is irrelevant in this court. And you can find tons of examples of that happening, and that's why. The Constitution is basically written to give the government exact specifications of what they can and can't do. That's pretty much all the Constitution is.
Yeah, and people don't realize that if you're a U.S. citizen, you don't have those constitutionally protected rights. And I feel like, do you think that people, like, if they don't have a passport and they're still using a driver's license, but they try to, recite some of these laws, they still get arrested because they're still technically contracting?
Yeah, a driver's license is evidence that you have to sign that you're either a resident of a state, which means that you're a foreigner, or that you're a U.S. citizen in order to get a driver's license. So you can't be a citizen of the state and have a driver's license at the same time. It is legally and physically impossible. A driver's license is evidence that you are not a citizen of the state.
Exactly.
And in order to get a driver's license, you have to say under penalty of perjury that you are either A, a U.S. citizen, or B, that you are a resident of the state, which means that you are a temporary visitor and your citizenship lies elsewhere. The word resident means temporary visitor, and citizenship lies elsewhere. So, for example, if you were to say you are a U.S. citizen when you are not, like, for example, if I were to say I was a U.S. citizen, I would be committing a felony under 18 U.S.C. 911. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. So you have to say one of two things to get a driver's license. Either A, that you're a U.S. citizen, which if you're not and you say you are, you can go to prison for up to 3 years. You're a felon. If you say you're a resident of a state, like if I said I was a resident of California, I'd be going to prison because I'm actually a citizen of California, not a temporary visitor where my citizenship lies elsewhere. So by saying that I'm a resident of California would be perjury. Perjury is also a felony up to 1 year in prison. So to say that you're a resident when you're not would be up to 1 year in prison. To say that you're a U.S. citizen when you're not would be up to 3 years in prison. And you have to commit one of those two felonies to get a driver's license. So a driver's license for a vast majority of people in America is evidence that you are a felon. You just haven't been prosecuted yet. You're basically not a felon until you're prosecuted. You're basically almost a felon. Once you're prosecuted, you'll be a felon. You're just awaiting prosecution of felonies, essentially, if you have a driver's license.
And people have no clue.
Yeah. So if we go to even what I would just pulled up, this is new for me. This is kind of interesting, right? So from Title 8, Section 1101, subsection A20, lawfully admitted for permanent residence means the status of having been lawfully accorded the privilege of residing permanently in the United States as an immigrant in accordance with the immigration laws. You say you're a resident. Okay. That means you're an immigrant. What is the definition of the word immigrant? Ooh, it's long. Look at that.
That's
Holy
so
Jesus.
crazy for one word.
So I'm going to read this. Not now, for God's sake, not now, but I'm going to read this for sure. This is interesting. So obviously there's a lot here. I've never seen anything like this. This is wild. So the word immigrant means someone who's not a citizen of the state. And I guess what they're doing is they're just going through every single example of what that could be, I guess. I don't know what they're doing here. I'm definitely going to read this, not now. An ambassador, public minister, diplomat, right? That has been accredited by a foreign government.
Yeah. Would you technically be a foreign government?
Yeah.
Okay,
H in
yeah.
USC 11. Includes any government, faction, or body of insurgents within a country with which the United States is at peace, irrespective of recognition by the United States.
Yeah, so as long as you're not trying to go to war with the government, you're good.
Yeah. So residents, you would need to be an immigrant to be a resident. So again, driver's license, you have to say you're either a U.S. citizen, which is a released slave of African descent, released by the 13th Amendment and given a special citizenship class by the 14th Amendment, or that you're a resident of California, meaning that you're not a citizen of California, you're an immigrant inside of California.
That's wild.
So I got rid of my driver's license because I'm a felon if I didn't get rid of it. And if I would have been prosecuted, I would have been going to prison for either 1 year for saying that I was a resident, or up to 3 years for saying that I was a U.S. citizen. So I got rid of that thing like it was a fucking burning building. I can't have a
Yeah.
driver's license. If any officer asks me for one or anyone asks me for one, officer, I can't get one of those. If I get one of those, I'm going to prison so motherfucking fast, it's going to make your head spin. Can't have
And
one.
weren't you saying that you want to get a parking ticket?
Yeah, that's a whole nother. We're not going to get into that because we've already been
That's
going for a
fine.
while.
Yeah.
That's the financial part. You just watch the Cult of Conspiracy show for all that information. A parking ticket is an unconditional order to pay, which is called a draft, which is a negotiable instrument. It's literally cash. A parking ticket is like they stuck a $50 Federal Reserve note under your window. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that it goes so deep.
So they stick shit under your windows. If a cop pulls you over and gives you a citation, it's just cash. They're just handing you cash. But let's get back into these slaughterhouse cases. Okay, we're gonna skip that one. In the early history of the organization of the government, its statesmen seem to have divided on the line which should separate the powers of the national government from those of the state governments, and through this line has never been very well defined in public opinion. Such a division has continued from that day to this. The adoption of the first 11 amendments to the Constitution, so soon after the original instrument was accepted, shows a prevailing sense of danger at that time from the federal power. And it cannot be denied that such a jealousy continued to exist with many patriotic men until the breaking out of the late Civil War. It was then discovered that the true danger to the perpetuity of the Union was in the capacity of the state organizations to combine and concentrate all the powers of the state and of contiguous states for a determined resistance to the general government. Talking about the tensions between state and federal government, right? It had never been held in any case which had come under its observation, either in the state or federal courts, that a corporation was a citizen within the meaning of the clause in question, entitling the citizens of each state to the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Let's see, let me read this one again. It had never been held in any case which had come under its observation, either in the state or federal courts, that a corporation was a citizen within the meaning of the clause in question, entitling the citizens of each state to the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Yeah. That one's interesting. I haven't looked at that one in a long time. And then this is the last quote that I have here, culled from the Slaughterhouse Cases. The people of this country brought with them to its shores the rights of Englishmen, the rights which had been wrested from the English sovereigns at various periods of the nation's history. One of these fundamental rights was expressed in these words found in Magna Charta, quote, "No free man shall be taken or imprisoned or be disseized of his freehold or liberties or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we pass upon him or condemn him, but by lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land." Quote. And that is the Slaughterhouse Cases. And basically, this case is the case that destroyed America. And the reason why is because it created this whole new nation called the United States that had its own different type of citizenship. And then every single government agency that has ever been opened since that time period, CIA, FBI, everything else, even the police, is all under this U.S. citizen category. So every single thing that you hate about America comes back to the Slaughterhouse Cases. The Slaughterhouse Cases destroyed everything. You can see that as well in the quote that I skipped over, but we can look at it now. This is a really important quote. That whenever a legislature has the right to accomplish a certain result, and that result is best attained by means of a corporation, it has the right to create such a corporation and to endow it with the powers necessary to effect the desired and lawful purpose, seems hardly to admit of debate. So this is when they started creating all these corporations. State of California is a corporation, tax thing is a corporation, all the cities became corporations, the police stations are all corporations, the CIA is a corporation, the FBI is a corporation, etc., 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 etc. Even all the courts are all corporations. And the way that you can prove that very easily is, do you need to be a U.S. citizen to serve on a jury? The answer is yes. So I cannot legally serve on a jury at all.
And they couldn't try to subpoena you either.
White people are, so technically speaking, white people can't be on juries.
That's insane.
No white person is allowed to be a juror. Any white person that's ever done jury duty is essentially a felon. Not quite, because you have to be aware of what's going on to be hit with a perjury charge. So the fact that you aren't aware means you can't actually be prosecuted for perjury. But that's the only thing that saves you from being a felon.
That's so wild.
Yeah, if they called me and tried to get me into jury duty, which they don't even know I'm here. I'm not even documented as being a resident of California, because I'm not a resident of California. You couldn't get me in on jury duty. If you got me in on jury duty, it would be 18 USC 1622. I would file a criminal case. So let's say there was a court of clerk or something, and they were trying to get me in on jury duty, and they were trying to force me in on jury duty. I would go to the DA, and I would file a criminal complaint under 18 USC 1622, subornation of perjury. Whoever procures another to commit any perjury is guilty of subornation of perjury and shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. So if anyone tried to say I was a resident of California, be going down to my buddy in a DA's office, I'd be filing a criminal complaint for 18 USC 622, federal criminal complaint. This will be a federal complaint, actually, now that I think about it. But I'm sure there's some state version of it that I could probably file. Or you could file something like this through the FBI, something like that. So if you wanted to go to like an federal agency and file a criminal complaint, it would be under 18 USC 1622. Anyone trying to say that I am a resident of California or U.S. citizen, it would be this, or it would be like the state version of what this is, would be what I would file as a criminal complaint. Not right away. I would tell him, look, I'm not either of those things, and if you keep pressing this, I'm going to file a criminal complaint, because you can't be, it seems like you're pushing really hard trying to get me to commit perjury. I'm just not going to do that. So you need to stop, cease and desist immediately. Otherwise, go ahead and continue, and I will be filing a federal 18 USC 1622 complaint, and I'll also find the state version of it, and I will also file a complaint on the state level as well.
That's so awesome. Did you think there was going to be as much litigation in the beginning?
No. That didn't even become a reality or anything until quite a bit later. It wasn't until like the end of 2023 when I realized and decided that we need to move very heavily into the litigation part of things. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's so awesome. I feel like you put out the dopest content, and every time it's like you constantly dig deeper. And I don't think people understand you give it all away for free. You could charge money, but you don't want that imaginary fake paper money.
Yeah, I thought I'd have infinite money by now with all the litigation and stuff. It's definitely taking longer than I thought, but we're working on it, and I'm pretty confident it's going to happen. In the near-ish future. So until then, I have to keep paying for things in the normal way. But infinite money is coming. I think it's coming pretty soon. I'm not too worried about it. I feel like you kind of buy your own karma. You put out good things and good. You get taken care of. So it's been working for me, and I live a very good life. And once I get the Amex Black Card or the Black Card from the U.S. Treasury or whoever's going to give me my Black Card, someone's giving me a motherfucking Black Card. Whoever gives it to me, I'm definitely going to be doing a international private jet craziness for a while because I've never done much traveling. I'd like to. So I think once I get that Black Card, it'll be we'll have to do a victory lap around the world in a private jet.
Hell yeah. And if there's anyone that could get it, I feel like it could definitely be you.
Yeah, it's just taking a little longer than I thought, but we're having a lot of fun. So that's really all that matters, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think anybody who listens to this needs to sign up for your 2.0 contract killer course and watch it 100 times in a row because it is fucking awesome.
Thank you.
Hell yeah. But all right, sir. I'm glad you came on.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, guys. If you want more information, sign up for the free course. If you want a full breakdown of the Dred Scott versus Sanford stuff in more detail, you can go to the Red Pill Cartel show that I just did that is uploaded on my YouTube channel. If you want to get the full super deep dive breakdown on infinite money, I just uploaded onto my YouTube channel the Cult of Conspiracy show that I did on infinite money. That one is also available right now.
They're both awesome. And the infinite money one is so crazy. I feel like you could talk for hours about that shit. It's so insane.
It's absolutely crazy.
And just another quick shout out to you because you're fucking awesome. He has all the templates for everything you need. Like when you watch the contract killer course, that Williams and Williams Law has so much awesome information on it.
Yeah, we have the case law section. I just created a driving versus traveling page, which is a full, really intense breakdown of that whole subject. Then on the Amnesty Coalition page is where I have all my resources and documents there. We've got trust documents, certificate of trust documents, special kinds of letters. We have the how to get your IRS bills to evaporate. We have we've got a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's all gold. Hell yeah, dude. Well, I'm going to keep watching your shit, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me on, guys. See you later.
Yo, what's up, everyone? I got to take a second to shout out an amazing company, Dreamer LA Collectibles. If you're into Pokemon cards or any TCG cards, this is the spot to check out. These guys are legit. They've been hooking me up with some insane Pokemon products, and I've been having a blast making content with them. Their selection is fire. Their prices are solid, and they're just an all-around great company to work with. If you're looking to grab some Pokemon packs, booster boxes, or singles, make sure to head over to my TikTok at Georgie350 and hit up my showcase to buy straight from the TikTok shop. And, of course, check out Dreamer LA Collectibles on TikTok shop for all your TCG needs. Huge shout out to them for supporting me, and I'm beyond grateful to be working with such an awesome company. Now, go get yourself some packs and start pulling some heat. And that concludes episode 32 with Brandon Joe Williams. I just want to give a huge shout out to Brandon and thank him for coming on the podcast and spitting some knowledge. Make sure you go check out his 2.0 contract killer course. You can sign up for it at onestupidfuck.com. Follow him on all social medias. Just type in Brandon Joe Williams and I guarantee you will find him. In closing, I want to start by saying be sure to follow me on TikTok at Georgie350, where you can check out all my latest videos. While you're there, don't forget to browse my TikTok showcase for some awesome products available through the TikTok shop. You can also follow me on Instagram, X, and Snapchat at Georgie350 to stay updated on everything I'm working on. I'm also now on Cameo. If you'd like a personalized video from me, head over to Cameo at Georgie350 and let's make it happen. For those looking to upgrade their wardrobe, I've partnered with some great brands. Habits 365, get 15% off at habits365.com with promo code Georgie350. You can go to Reaper Apparel Company, get 10% off at reaperapparelco.com with promo code Georgie350. Lastly, Cocobury, get 30% off premium sweatsuits in a variety of colors at cocobury.com with promo code Georgie350. Want to watch the video version of the podcast instead of just listening? You have two options. Get early access for $5 a month on Patreon at patreon.com/onceupona785, or subscribe to my Spotify premium plan for just $2.99 a month. And if you have any questions, comments, or want to be a guest on the show, feel free to email me at onceupona785@proton.me. Finally, I want to say thank you for watching, and if you enjoy the podcast and want to support it, please consider leaving a rating, a review, or simply sharing it with someone who might find it interesting. Every bit of support helps me move one step closer to making this a full-time gig, and I truly appreciate it. As always, let's hit him with the outro.
Yeah. Middle of the map, can't swear I'm at. You can say I'm whack, it's just not a fact.